Okay, so page number 78, you see here they have already reached a small town called Hor, and one of their companions, that is Daniel, has left them. Okay, uh, left them because he was going somewhere else. Now the narrator is left with his driver. Okay, let's see where now they head for. Okay, so it was dark by the time we finally don't talk, left again, and after 10:30 p.m. we drew up outside a guest house. It became late in the evening, therefore they had to stay back in a guest house in Darchen for what turned out to be another troubled night. Okay, so it was another troubled night. Why? Because kicking around in the open air, rubbish dump that passed for the town of Hole had set off my cold once more. Okay, he became sick. Okay, down with cold and cough. Okay, let's see what happens after that. And then, though if truth be told, it had never quite disappeared with my herbal tea. One of my nostrils was blocked again, and as I lay down to sleep, I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me with sufficient oxygen. Okay, he has become totally sick. Okay, cold, and he was not able to even breathe properly. Okay, because his nostrils were blocked, and then I wasn't convinced that the other would provide me, other means other nostril. My watch told me I was at 4,760 meters. It wasn't much higher than Rabu, and there I would have been gasping for oxygen several times every night. I had grown accustomed to these nocturnal disturbances by now, but they still scared me. Nocturnal disturbances means when nocturnal means nightly, night. Okay. Um, so nocturnal disturbances here refers to the nightly disturbances of his health. Okay, that often used to trouble him when he was at a high altitude. Okay, so he was often having such problem, but of course, but they still scared me. Okay, tired and hungry, I started breathing through my mouth. After a while, I switched to single nostril power, which seemed to be admitting enough oxygen. But just as I was drifting off, I woke up abruptly. Something was wrong. My chest felt strangely heavy, and I set up a movement that cleared my nasal passage almost instantly and relieved the feeling in my chest. Curious, I thought. So immediately he was lying down, so immediately he sat up, okay, on his bed, and this is how somehow his nostril got relief, okay, and he was able to breathe little bit. I lay back down and tried again. Some same result. I was on the point of disappearing into the land of Nod when something told me not to. It must have been those emergency electrical impulses again, but this wasn't gasping for breath. I was simply not allowed to go to sleep. Okay. Again, he tried. He was not gasping for breath, but still he couldn't get sleep. Okay, he was not able to sleep. So sitting up once more immediately made me feel better. So once again he uh, woke up and sat on the bed, and then he felt better. I could breathe freely and my chest felt fine. But as soon as I lay down, my sinuses filled and my chest was odd. I tried propping myself upright against the wall, but now I couldn't manage to relax enough to drop off. I couldn't put my fingers on the reason, but I was afraid to go to sleep. A little voice inside me was saying that if I did, I might never wake up again. So I stayed awake all night. Okay, as he couldn't get sleep, so he had to uh, keep awake all throughout the night. Saturn took me to the Darchan Medical College next morning. Okay, the following morning, the medical college at Darchan was new and looked like a monastery from the outside with a very solid door that led into a courtyard. We found the consulting room, which was dark and cold and occupied by a Tibetan doctor who wore none of the paraphernalia that I had been expecting. Paraphernalia means here doctor suit, okay, stethoscope, and their particular apron. Okay, so the doctor was in civil dress, might be not wearing his paraphernalia that I had been expecting. No white coat. He looked like any other Tibetan with a thick pullover and a oobli hat. Okay, he just put on a pullover sweater and a oobli hat. Oobli means a weak hat. Okay. Now, when I explained my sleepless symptoms and my sudden aversion to lying down, because he developed subconscious fear in his mind, like if he lies down and he falls asleep, might be he will not be able to wake up once again, okay, at this climate, at this altitude. That is why that is how he developed aversion to lying down. Okay, so uh, when I explained my sleepless symptoms and my sudden aversion to lying down, he shot me a few questions while feeling the veins in my wrist. Okay, so he was checking the pulse and at the same time asking some questions to him. It's a cold, he said finally through Satan. A cold in the uh, a cold and the effects of altitude. I'll give you something for it. So doctor said nothing to worry because it's cold, too much of cold, and the effect of the altitude has worsened your condition. Okay. Yeah, I asked him if he thought I would recover enough to be able to do the Quora. Oh yes, he said, you will be fine. Okay. Then I walked out of the medical college clutching a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of paper. I had a 5-day course of Tibetan medicine, which I started right away. I opened an after breakfast package and found it contained a brown powder that I had to take with hot water. Okay, I had to take with hot water. It tasted just like cinnamon. The contents of the lunchtime and bedtime packages were less obviously identifiable. Both contained small spherical brown pellets, means tablets, okay, of different kinds. They looked suspiciously like sheep dung, but of course I took them. That night, after my first full day's course, I slept very soundly, like a log, not a dead man. Okay, and then on that night, okay, after the full day's course, when he went to bed, he slept very peacefully. Okay, without any problem. Now you see, once he saw that I was going to leave, Satan left. Once he saw that I was going to leave, Satan left me. Yes, to return to Lhasa. Okay. So when Satan was assured that the writer has no problem, okay, he has recovered almost. Then he is planning to return to Lhasa. As a Buddhist, he told me he knew that it didn't really matter if I passed away, but he thought it would be bad for business. Darchen didn't bad for business because, like, what will happen, like, if the narrator being a very reputable person, famous person, okay, if he died, then it is a question mark on his driving skill also, because it was he who brought the narrator to to this Mount Kailash, okay, nearby Mount Kailash. So that is why it will be bad for his business after a good night's sleep. And from Darchan, it was nearby actually, like vehicles can't go further, it seems. Okay, that the roads were not navigable. Okay, you have to take the help of some, other animals like yokes and all that. Okay, to be able to reach that particular place, you cannot go by any vehicle. Okay, Darchan didn't look so horrible after a good night's sleep. It was still dusty, partially derelict. Derelict means left alone. Okay, not so much of population, and punctuated by heaps of rubble and refuse. Okay, a lot of rubbles were there, a lot of refuse, garbages were there, dirty town. But the sun shone brilliantly in a clear blue sky, and the outlook across the plain to the south gave me a vision of the Himalayas, commanded by a huge snow-capped mountain, Gurla Mandata, with just a wisp of clouds suspended over its summit. The town had a couple of rudimentary general stores selling Chinese cigarettes, soap, and other basic provisions. Another town, that is Darchen, where he fell asleep. Okay, I mean fell sick. Darchen. So they have almost reached near Mount Kailash. Okay, let's see. So now the writer was talking about a small town called Darchen. Okay, which was also like Ho, not very much beautiful, in the sense that it was full of garbage and refuse. Okay, and all this stuff. Okay, but there were some general stores available there. So it was about these general stores were selling Chinese cigarettes, bench, soap, and other basic provisions, as well as the usual strings of prayer flags. Okay, because prayer flags, people who the pilgrims, okay, who used to go there carried prayer flags. Okay, that is why general stores also used to sell prayer flags as well. In front of one, in front of one, man gathered in the afternoon for a game of pool, the battered table looking supremely incongruous in the open air, while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of a narrow brook that babbled down past my guest house. Darchen felt relaxed and unhurried, but for me, it came with a significant drawback. Okay, there were no pilgrims. Okay, Darchen, there was no. Darchen felt relaxed means what? Do you know what is this figure of speech called? Darchen felt relaxed. Like simile, metaphor, alteration, उसके बाद personification. So what kind of figure of speech is this?
Oxymoron.
Not oxymoron. Darchen felt relaxed. Who usually feels relaxed?
Humans.
Humans. Very good. What's that? Laugh. So Darchen being a place felt relaxed. So Darchen has been personified here. Okay. So it's a personification. So Darchen felt relaxed and unhurried. Unhurried. देखो, unhurried also used for human beings and all. So here it's used for Darchen place here. But for me it came with a significant drawback. What is the drawback? No pilgrims except the narrator. Okay. Normally there are a lot of pilgrims in a place which is usually closer to the pilgrimage. Okay. And the pilgrimage that is here, Mount Kailash, is very close to Darchen. But unfortunately, there were no pilgrims. Let's see why. Okay, I'd been told that at the height of the pilgrimage season, the town was bustling with visitors. Height of the pilgrimage season, but height of the pilgrimage season means when there is time for pilgrims to go there. So it seems either the narrator has reached there earlier or he might have reached there late. So let's find out. So many brought their own accommodation and enlarging the settlement round its edge as they set up there. What? Tents which spilled down onto the plain. I had timed my arrival for the beginning of the season, but it seemed I was too early. So the writer reached there early, okay, much early actually, okay. Maybe 2-3 months ahead he reached there. That is why there were no pilgrims at Darchen. Earlier, at the height of pilgrimage season, what happened? People used to be there and they used to pitch up tents, and the whole of Darchen was so much populated. But now that he came early, there were hardly any pilgrims. You see here, then you see, okay. One afternoon, I sat pondering my options. Pondering means thinking deeply. So one afternoon, I sat pondering my options over a glass of tea in Darchen's only cafe. Okay, in the afternoon, he was sitting in the cafe, drinking the tea, and he was pondering. Okay, while drinking tea, he was thinking, he was reflecting on something. So what was he reflecting on? Let's see. After little consideration, I concluded they were severely limited. Clearly, I hadn't made much progress with my self-help program on positive thinking. Do you understand the meaning of this? What does it mean? Tell me. Clearly, I hadn't made much progress with my self-help program on positive thinking. What does it mean?
He is thinking something negative.
Then,
He has not made any progress in positive thinking, in thinking right, like optimistic person.
yes, I. So, listen here. The poet, the writer and narrator here has been studying self-help books. Okay, so he was trying to become optimistic about himself. Okay, and the situation. But as about Darchen and this place, he became a bit negative. Okay, he developed sort of a negative thinking. Therefore, he said, "I did not make much of progress with my self-help book on positivity." Okay, means he was still somewhat pessimist, okay, about himself, about his decision might be. So let's see. Uh, so about what he became negative. If there is some hint given here, can you tell me? One afternoon, see, all of you see. One afternoon, I sat pondering my options over a glass of tea in Darchen's only cafe. Okay. Then, after a little consideration, I concluded they were severely limited. What was severely limited? Yes. They are severely limited. Okay. So he became a bit negative about the thought of his thought about the presence of cafe all around. That is why he said, might be my self-help book didn't work uh, on me. I was thinking negative about the presence of cafe in Darchin. Okay, Darchin. Now, in my defense, I hadn't been easy with all my sleeping difficulties, but however, I looked at it. I could only wait. The pilgrimage trail was well trodden, but I didn't fancy doing it alone. The Kora was seasonal because parts of the route were liable to blockage by snow. Okay, that is why the part of the season when there was hardly any snow, only that time the pilgrims used to go there. That is why it was very much seasonal. Rest part of the season might be it was all blocked with snow, so it was difficult for the pilgrims to visit there. That is why Koda had the Koda season was very much limited to a particular few months only. Okay, so that is why he says, in my defense, I hadn't been easy with all my sleeping difficulties, but however, I looked at it, I could only wait. The pilgrimage trail was well trodden. Trail means road here. I traveled the pilgrimage trail, okay, quite well, but I didn't fancy doing it alone because it was very difficult, challenging route for me, journey for me. The Kora was seasonal because parts of the route were liable to blockage by snow. I had no idea whether or not the snow had cleared, but I wasn't encouraged by the chunks of dirty ice that still clung to the banks of Darchen's brook. Since Satan had left, I hadn't come across anyone in Darchen with enough English to answer even this most basic question. How do you understand by this? Since Satan has left, he was, and Satan used to speak English, and the local people didn't know how to speak English. That is why it was very difficult for him to communicate in Darchen for the narrator. Okay, he wanted to ask about the Kora season and all that, snow and all that, but he was not able to ask question, the most basic question, okay, in English because there was I mean, no one who could speak English. Okay, there in Darchen. But fortunately, he comes across a person. You see, until that is, I met Norbu. Norbu, the cafe was small, dark and cavernous, with a long metal stove that ran down the middle. The walls and ceiling were wreathed in sheets of multicolored plastic of the stripped variety, broad blue, red, and white, that is made into stout, voluminous shopping bags sold all over China and in many other countries of Asia as well as Europe. As such, plastic must rate as one of China's most successful exports along the Silk Road today. The cafe had a single window beside which I had taken up position so that I could see the pages of my notebook. I had also brought a novel with me to help pass the time. Okay, he was at that time seated in the cafe with a novel in his hand to pass his time, and he was desperately looking for a company, English speaking company, with whom he can spare some time because he reached at such an odd time of the year in Darchen that it was very difficult for him to get other pilgrims, okay, other pilgrims. So let's see. The cafe had a single, okay. Norbu saw my book when he came in and asked with a gesture if he could sit opposite me at my rickety table. Rickety means weak table. You English? He inquired after he had ordered tea. I told him I was, and we struck up a conversation. So Norbu, I'll let you know who is Norbu, okay? He is also a scholar, okay? So how could you understand that the narrator could speak English? How could he understand? Yes, he was reading a novel, okay, English novel. That is how Norbu came to know that he could understand or speak English. Now you see, Norbu saw my book, okay. You English, he inquired after he ordered tea. I told him I was, and we struck up a conversation. Okay. Then, I didn't think he was from those parts because he was wearing a wind cheater and metal rimmed spectacles of a Western style. He was Tibetan, he told me, but worked in Beijing at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. I assured he was on some sort of field work. So he is from China actually. He's working in one of the colleges in China, Norbu, and he was also an academician belonging to social science department in the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. I assume he was on some sort of field work. Yes and no, he said. I have come to do the Kora. My heart jumped. Narbu had been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in various works on Buddhist literature for many years. He told me, but he had never actually done it himself. Okay, so he said, I have also come for the purpose of doing Kora. Okay, but he has never done Kora before, so it's for the first time that Narbu has come to perform it. So let's see, okay, how they team up with one another. When the time came for me to tell him what brought me to Darchen, his eyes lit up. We could be a team, he said excitedly. Two academics who have escaped from the library, okay, because they are research scholars, both the narrator and Narbu. So usually their time is spent in studying in the library, okay. So that is why two academics who have escaped from the library because they are out now for doing Quora. Perhaps my positive thinking strategy was working after all. My initial relief at meeting Narbu, who was also staying in the guest house, was tempered by the realization that he was almost as ill equipped as I was for the pilgrimage. Anushka, don't get distracted by okay, bad boys, okay? Okay, so he said that probably Narbu was also not well equipped, okay, with things which were required for doing karma. Sorry, क्या नाम है इसका? Hora. Okay. So my initial relief at meeting Narbu, who was also staying in the guest house, was tempered by the realization that he was almost as ill-equipped as I was for the pilgrimage. Okay, he kept telling me how fat he was and how hard it was going to be. Very high up, he kept reminding me, so tiresome to walk. He wasn't really a practicing Buddhist, it transpired, but he had enthusiasm and he was, of course, Tibetan. So, what happened, uh, uh, Norbu as well as the narrator were not so much acquainted with the procedures of doing Kora, okay? Therefore, the writer says that he was as ill-equipped in terms, as ill-equipped like me, okay? Or as ill-equipped as me when it came to doing Kora, or when it came to knowing the procedures of doing Kora, okay? So, both of them were almost innocent insofar as performing Kora is concerned. They came without being equipped properly. Now, very high up, he kept reminding me, so tiresome to work, and uh, Norbu was fat enough, so he was a bit worried whether he could climb up. Okay, because it requires a little bit of climbing also to reach Mount Kailash from Darchan. Okay, because no vehicles go there, right? So another option is there, of course. EX are there, so on their backs you can travel. Let's see what happens. My initial relief at meeting, okay, over. Very high up, he kept reminding me, so tiresome to work. Okay, although I had originally envisaged means I have guessed, I have foreseen. Although I had originally envisaged making the trek in the company of devout believers, on reflection, I decided that perhaps Norbu would turn out to be the ideal companion. Okay, so initially before he met Nargu, he was thinking of he thought of waiting there in Darchen, and when other pilgrims came there, they would all go together. But as Nargu has come for the same purpose, so both of them decided to go together. Okay, so that is why he thinks Narvu to be his ideal companion. He suggested we hire some yaks to carry our luggage, which I interpreted as a good sign, and he had no intention of procrastinating himself all round the mountain. Right? So, not possible, he cried, collapsing across the table in hysterical laughter. It wasn't his style, and anyway, his tummy was too big. Okay. So, what was that Narbu was not interested? We hired some yaks to carry out our luggage, which I interpreted as a good sign, and he had no intention of prostrating himself all around the mountain. Not possible, he cried, collapsing across the table. Because if they took yaks, in that case, they had to go in a roundabout manner, which he was not interested. That is why he did not agree. But afterwards, together they reached there. Okay.